Yeah, I mean, it's great that he has the advantage of knowing that he's autistic, because that sounds like me when I was a kid. I mean, I used to be able to write music in my head, like for like four, six, even 12 different instruments just in my head. And but then, and people would say, "Oh my God, it's amazing! It's so clever," and all that kind of stuff. But then, if even to this day, if I sit down with anybody and try to work out money, balancing how much to spend this month and how much to save, and how that money means that numbers, I can't do it. I've never been able to do it. Can't do it. I failed maths even like at the basic level at school, and then was embarrassed to ever talk about it. So until very recently, I've kind of gone through life making a real mess of that side of things. And of course, you don't go around normally saying what you're not good at. You don't go around sort of certainly not when you're an entertainer or a performer or an artist. You know, you don't stay and work by telling everybody what you're not good at.
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy and very honored to welcome Mr. Tim Arnold here, who's got a new album out, and we're going to talk about that and get to know him. So let's kick this off right, man. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh my goodness. Well, where to begin? And we've only just met, Kyle. About myself, I guess I'm from a what would you call an unorthodox family. My mother's gay. My grandmother was a midget who worked, like a really small lady who worked in the theater.
Wow.
And I grew up with two mums, and I'm half Asian, so I'm mixed race. I'm a lifelong vegetarian, and I've been making music since I was about 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that's formed pretty much all the focus of my life. Making records and also making films that go with my music as well. I started making, I guess, more straightforward music videos like 15 years ago, and then it, became a bit wider, and that's why the latest album is also a feature-length film. So that's, yeah, that is that okay for kind of a nutshell nugget?
That'll work. That'll work. So the video that was sent to me, you made that video?
Yeah. Do you mean the track Start With the Sound?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I wrote the song, and at the same time as writing the song, I was kind of making the story that you see in that video, which is all, about sound and our relationship to it, that is very sacred in a way, I think, and then how it's not so sacred when large corporations get involved, and
Yeah.
and how what's driving their motivation with their involvement with music. But there's some, it's some humor in there as well. It's satirical and a bit sci-fi. So yeah, it was a real it was a blast to make it. I never thought that I would be able to make it. I just kept picturing it all when I was recording the song.
Did you like have influences that helped you to create that sound? Because to me, it kind of reminds me of that 80s kind of like Gary Newman or Thomas Dolby kind of stuff,
Yeah, I don't know those two artists so well. I came in a bit late in the 80s. Because I was 5 in 1980. So So, but by the time I was 9, 1984, I really discovered popular music.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure what I liked, but I was kind of borrowing my older brother's girlfriend's records, and the one that I fell in love with was Ultravox,
Oh yeah.
and that was the first sort of band, pop band, and also a man. I grew up without a dad, so that, and I didn't really have a lot of male figures. All my mum's friends were mostly gay women, and so I sort of I latched onto that and just thought that's maybe I could be like that one, because there were no role models. So Mijur became a role model from an early age, which is funny as well because I'm known for two things in my work. I think writing songs and using my music for causes a lot of the time. I don't like to call myself a noun, but I suppose I am and have been an activist for a long time to support and champion a lot of different causes. And so it's funny actually thinking of that. Mijur, obviously the songwriter behind Band Aid and the whole Live Aid movement that he carried with Bob Geldof. That was who I picked. So those very jagged electronic sounds, which only obviously form his part of his work, really I started listening to when I made this record. Japan as well a little bit, David Sylvian, and some of the more angular music from Kate Bush as well. So those sounds were very much. I was living back where I grew up as a kid in North London, and so I was a kind of on a. I'd moved out of Soho, so I guess it might be like, I don't know America, but maybe like living in Manhattan and then going out further into New York State or something like that. Where it's just a bit calmer, bit slower pace, and able to hear what's going on inside yourself a little bit more. And so I think I revisited all my childhood records, and fell in love with those sounds again. And of course, you fall in love with sounds as a musician, you want to make them as well as listen to them. So I think that's where that track comes from.
Yeah, Bob Geldof, Boomtown Rats, man.
Yeah. And a great character, Bob Geldof.
Yeah.
I think just I'd like to see more characters like that in popular culture.
Gosh, I think I was around 15, 16 years old when they did Live Aid, and I watched
Right.
all of it, man. I
Yeah.
even recorded it. I wished I still had the VHS tape of that. That would have been cool to still have.
Yeah, it's a real historic moment, I guess, along with those, well, this slightly sadder occasion, but when people always cite where they were when Kennedy died, most people also know where they were when Live Aid happens. It's a really, I remember watching it with my brother. I was 9, so 9 or 10. Yeah, and just staying up all night and loving seeing crazy Irishmen swearing, cursing on television. It's like I couldn't believe it, but loved it. Yeah, it was very inspiring. I think that period.
Wasn't it Phil Collins that was in the UK and then flew all the way to America to perform
Yeah,
there as well?
I
God,
think you're right.
crazy.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, it was one of those wonderful uh, occasions where nobody was putting up a red light. Things are different these days, of course, and there's a lot of red lights before you get a green light. And I really admire the artists and the promoters and the business. They all seem to have a very, I don't know, spontaneous passion at the time, which, if for my generation, I think it really inspired a lot of people that, like me, that ended up making music.
well, part of the album kind of reminds me of the completion backwards principle from the Tubes. where you have the commentary going on.
Oh, say that again. So with my album, with Super Connected.
Yeah. You have somebody that comes on and does a little commentary in a couple of different spots. And
Yeah. Well, yes. The idea of, I mean, a lot of the album is to do with how pervasive and invasive big tech companies are in our day-to-day lives. You know, whether it's to do with adverts in the middle of our favorite music, or commercials coming through our social media feeds, or you know, those companies demanding our data and personal information in exchange for something that we need. And the one thing that really has frustrated me consistently since the beginning of the digital revolution was just the interruption of anything with an advert, especially if it was something emotional. For me, music is always emotional, and films and music videos too. And I know most of us kind of accept it now and just kind of just go, that's normal, right? We have an advert in the middle of something. I've never got to that point. I don't think I ever will. I'm too attached to the way that I experienced it up until the end of the 90s. You know, things didn't start changing until I was in my mid-20s in that way. So I'd lived a lot of life with what is now a luxury, but wasn't. It was just normal to be able to experience stuff that was moving without being advertised at, you know. So I just thought it was a joke at first. I just thought it would be fun to put a track on the album that sounded like an advert. So but to do with the story, because it is a narrative story, you know, and I had that kind of building the whole time. Once I'd written 3 or 4 songs, I thought this is a whole story. So this is either going to be a musical or a film. And so, you know, the purpose of having that track, which is the actor and comedian Stephen Fry, who does the voiceover on it as like a kind of a typical ad that you might hear on Spotify or any of those companies, was also to break the album into 2 parts, right? You know, on a vinyl record or a cassette, you get that. And we lost it with CDs, and you certainly don't get 2 parts. You don't get any parts. It's just a mishmash on streaming, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to be something to mark that there was Act 1 and there was Act 2. That it was that theatrical part of the album. I wanted to make sense. And but then you know, it just made me laugh to think that you could be listening to the album and hear an advert, but actually it wasn't the album, it was part of the album. And I listened to it on Spotify for the first time last week or whatever, and I you know, this is I think I made the joke for myself. I couldn't stop laughing. I was in hysterics because I forgot, and I was listening to I had the album on. I just wanted to play it once, and then that came on, and I kind of went like that, and then a real advert came on afterwards, because I don't pay for Spotify. I just have the free one.
Right.
And a real one came. I was just in hysterics. I just thought, so I guess it's a joke in a way, but I guess there's a comment in it as well that it's how long will we accept this? You know, that parts of our life and shared experience, which music is, of course, have to be, you know, infiltrated with an agenda to maintain control over people's attention. And you know, it's like the whole purpose of listening to music is to stop paying attention to all the other stuff that's going on in life. And I think it's really, I actually think it's kind of evil, like putting in stuff that you're meant to buy or sell that they know that you want because they've checked your data, in the middle of the stuff that you love. I think it's something that's very, maybe in 50 years, younger people will look back on it and go, wow, that was really naughty. You know, like we look back on slavery now, you know, and go, wow, that was like normal to some people. And I think it's the same with this. I think in years to come, people will look back and kind of think, this could never happen today. People putting adverts in the middle of like beautiful art and music and film, and you know, I think it'll go eventually. So I guess I'm just trying to foretell it a little bit with the album.
It's almost reminiscent of the Who, that album, The Who Sell Out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about value, isn't it? It's about what, you know, how much do we accept of the lack of value that's attributed to our experiences in our life, you know, and the way we connect with each other is a huge part of that, which, you know, most of the album's about. But I ran into trouble straight away. I mean, I'm at the end now, pretty almost, of like 6 months worth of battles trying to get the album onto streaming services because of that track.
Really?
Yeah. No, they wouldn't accept it. I had to really fight it, which has been exhausting. But most companies were kind of, you know, have that. You can't have a pretend advert, because our business model is based on making money from real adverts, and you putting a pretend one on is sort of spurious, and some people will feel tricked. It's a joke, it's comedy, it's even a comic actor who's speaking on it, and the product in the let's call it a pretend commercial, this song, it's a piece of music as well, but it's with a pretend commercial voiceover, and you know, it's about a product called an eye head. To me it was a joke and it's so funny, but what's even funnier is the companies that think that there are human beings that might think that that is real and will try to buy one.
You know, it wouldn't surprise me.
I just think it's very meta, and of course my album is not on Apple because they obviously make iProducts, and so far we're still working on that. I say we, it's me. I'm still trying to find a way to get. I might have, but the word with the album for Apple is that I have to remove that track if I want my album on Apple.
You hit a nerve. That's what it is.
I know, and when they say that, and they said this when I was campaigning in the West End to try and save music venues, and some very powerful people were quite upset with me, and some of the nice councillors at Westminster that are saying, well, if they're that upset with you, you've hit a nerve and you're doing something right.
Exactly what I was thinking.
So I don't know what that means for me as an artist, but anyway, it's kind of ongoing, but I think, yeah, it's shined a light on something that's wrong, which is I don't think artists should have satire censored from
Thank you
in music or anything else, really, but certainly in music. I mean, gosh, if we look back at some of the most popular records of the last 50 years, I don't know how we'd have got through with this kind of rule in place.
And with technology now, it's very convenient. I mean, you gotta admit, the new stuff that comes out, it just making albums and all the different things you can do with technology, it's so beneficial, but at the same time it seems to be hurting us. To me, it is a distraction. I don't know how it is over there in the UK, but most of the stores here have the self-checkout lines where you go and you just swipe your own products and pay. And to me, I want to go and talk to a human being. And it seems like technology, instead of bringing us together, is separating us. I don't know if you
Yeah,
feel that way, but
I think very much in my day-to-day life, I really noticed that. In fact, I went to the supermarket an hour ago, and I often try to get in the queue to speak to. There's like 2 checkouts where there's people,
right.
and I know them because it's where I've been shopping for quite a few years, and they're the same people working there, and I like talking to them. But I couldn't. There was too many people there, and I had to get back to talk to you. so I had to use the machine, and yeah, I think it's often the case with progress where there's a real valid drive to make things convenient and effective, more effective, I suppose. But the drive to do that, it often misses out what really enriches all of our lives. And Kevin Godley is the person that introduced me to Billy, who introduced me to you. And Kevin's always looking for the God-given mistake. When I worked with him on a couple of projects, but the film that we made together, and he just said that's a great mistake. Let's leave that in, and that's what it is to be artful. And I'm a firm believer that everyone's an artist, and you might be a singer, or you might be an actor, or you might be somebody who's really artful with your garden or your conversation skills or your banking or whatever. There's an art to everything, I think, and I think those elements of making society more effective and more productive and forget the opportunity for every single human being to be artful in whatever it is they do. And so yeah, I'm not against technology at all, because I think there's some elements of it, particularly with health, that are just starting to and will benefit humanity. I think it's incredible. But if we all stop looking in each other's eyes and stop listening to each other and stop being embodied, he says, in the middle of a Zoom call, then it's gonna raise problems, which I think we've seen already after the pandemic, and how many young people were isolated, and how that's affecting. And certainly, I lecture music students and teach mentoring and that kind of stuff, and the students that I've worked with were the kind of that generation. They were like 14 or 15 in the pandemic. So that moment where you're just starting to feel life, and I'm going to go out and going to go to my first gig and all that kind of stuff. That generation have had a really tough 3 years.
Yes, they really have.
And I'm sure for all kinds of reasons, but what we notice is the how strange it is for some of them to just be in social situations without these things.
Yeah. Always looking down at the phone.
Yeah. And it's like, with super connected, I think some people think I'm kind of like anti-tech or something. I'm not. I would never advocate for like a world that doesn't have technology or doesn't have mobile devices. I through my songs on the album, I do advocate for holding and nurturing everything we had before as well. I just believe that it's the same as when I used to campaign in Soho. I love the new businesses, the new theatre they built, but I think holding on to the old stuff when you bring new stuff in is what makes something beautiful. I'm retro futurist, it's both. It's the integration. It's not like, let's stamp out what we had last year to bring in something new. Let's bring it to, because it's worked. And, there's been a lot of great communication happening over the last, whatever, thousands of years without technology. It's a different way of communicating, and that's what I believe in, diversity and having the choices to do it in all the different ways, and being aware of the new stuff, because smoking was cool in the 30s, and now look at it, right?
Right.
Everything's cool when it starts, and it's. I think we're wise enough now to know that there are some dangers with the exciting things that we discover. It's like Ed Snowden, he always says with technology, we always ask if we could do this or we could do that, but we never ask if we should.
Yeah.
So, I really advocate for a lot more self-awareness, and it's hard at the rate that we're being advertised at, to stop and have that space to find some self-awareness.
One of the benefits that I found with technology, especially during the pandemic time, was using Zoom. I get to talk to people like I'm talking to you right now. You're all the way over in the UK. Here I am in Texas, and
Yeah.
I've got to meet so many wonderful people. I've learned so many great things, and it's really changed my life because of this communication. But a lot of people, they like texting and the instant messages or whatever you see on social media. And it's sad that I'm seeing kids that don't know how to communicate because they're so used to typing everything out.
Yeah. I mean, I can only talk about my own experience of it. Was that, I mean, I've struggled since the beginning with text and WhatsApp and all these kind of endless messenger and things like that. Since, what is it, we're in 2023 now, for probably like 10 years, I've really struggled. And I'm an early adopter. I was on everything before anyone else. I think because I was in America when MySpace started, and I just find that if there's silence in communication, I tend to fill in the gaps myself. So I'm talking to you now, we can hear each other. There's sound. So I don't fill in gaps. I listen to you, and I get an idea from the way you move as well. And that's enough for me to really, like, just I take care of my own stuff because you're quite embodied in a way, even on the screen. But when it's silent and things come in, I can't read the tone. I don't really know what that message means. I see what the words mean. Don't know what mood they're in. I don't know if they're drunk. I don't know if they like me anymore. I don't know if they ever liked me. Why are they asking me that? They don't like me. It just goes on and on. I'm the wrong person for no company, no Facebook or Apple or any company trying to get you to text message will ever be able to get me to do it. I leave voice notes with everybody. And when somebody sends me a message, I normally will call them to find out how they say what they texted me, because I can't. And I think that has something to do with my autism. Certainly the doctor who diagnosed me said a lot of my communication problems were around that. Now, I'm over 40. Maybe it's easier for young people, but I'm guessing that for very young people that might have a similar problem, that's going to be a real hard life to navigate, because it's much more part of a young person's life, I think, to use those kind of platforms. But this album really kind of came about because of that. I did a short tour in Italy in 2016, and I stayed with this guy who was a fan who'd asked me to come over and do these shows, and he funded it. It was really lovely. Wow. And we'd never met in person, but he'd written to me for years, and he knew all my music, and so I went and did the show. And then I eventually, after the first day, said, "What do you do for a living?" And it turned out he was he's a neuropsychotherapist whose job it is to assess teenagers who have kind of dropped out of society and have poor communication skills.
Mhm.
But when I met him in 2016, he said it completely changed. And for the last year, he'd just been visiting teenagers locked in their bedrooms, in bed, on their mobile phones, never going to school anymore, falling out with their parents. And he would have to do, like, you know, evaluations for treatment and stuff like that. And but they were like high on just communicating across multiple platforms remotely, but could not go to school and could not meet with friends their own ages. And that was when Super Connected as an album was sort of born out of that, because it sort of played itself out in my head like a movie. And it was frightening, but it was also intriguing, and that's how I ended up making this whole album from him. And that was in 2016. I mean, it's taken, because of the pandemic, a little bit as well. It's taken, you know, 6.5 years to get this record ready and out. And a lot of the time, because the problems I've been writing about were, you know, tech and using mobile phones in an unhealthy way, and all. It just, as soon as the pandemic started, that was like, I couldn't say that. I was like, it was blasphemy to suggest that you know, we might want to think about how much we use our mobile phones. You know? It still is with some people. I have lots of friends who just, I know them well, and they're sort of like, Tim's just like, you know, he's becoming a neo-Luddite. And I kind of aspire to be a neo-Luddite, to be honest, because I have to use the tech like all of us. But my God, if I go for a digital detox for a day or a weekend, if I'm lucky, I'm so grateful to feel like it's 1985 again.
Oh, when we go out somewhere,
yeah,
and I'll be like, oh, I forgot my phone at the house. My wife will say, oh, you want to turn around and get it? I'm like, nope. I'm glad I forgot it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a choice, isn't it? I think if you're working in an area where you've got to be on responsive, like 9 to 5 or whatever, then that's great. But if you're still like that the weekend, or if you're still like that when you're spending that valuable time with your children or elders, you know, it's that thing. I think those of us in the middle of our lives, we've got that. I think it's a duty to connect with the young ones while they're starting to make their journey into the world, and connect with the older ones who are making their journey out of the world, you know. And I've seen both sides. I've seen little kids looking upset because their mum is on an iPad, and I've seen older people kind of looking at their children who are adults doing the same thing. And that's I mean, that's what the film of the album was. That's the drama is about, that really, about those observations. And it's not our fault, and I don't think it's any human's fault. I think it's the system that we've ended up in, and like all systems, they just kind of, it feels like there's a baddie. I don't think there is a baddie. I just think we've gone too far, and the system has got its own not agenda, it's got its own drive, or once you start it, you can't stop.
Well, it's sad when you go out to eat somewhere and the whole family is sitting around the table with their phone up to their faces. Or I've even been in homes where you're sitting in the same room and people are texting back and forth to each other.
You're the second person who said that to me this week. Yeah,
that's crazy. And kids seem to get like a dopamine rush or something when they get a message, or that like on social media, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think sometimes if I wasn't the kind of musician that had decided I want to make long form records that have a novel, you know, that was the thing that got me excited. And Paul McCartney said it with Sgt. Pepper's. He said, we've done the musical equivalent of a novel. And it was that made me think, yeah, you can do it with sound as well, and it's a journey. And of course, most adults and young people spent the 70s sitting for 45 minutes with a record in a room doing nothing else. And that was, I grew up thinking that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make those records. And then suddenly, I don't know, I hit 30 and like nobody I know will do that anymore. No one will sit and listen to a whole record. And you can't, even when you do, you can get interrupted by adverts, of course. So it's not a sacred art form that's easy to find, and until last week, and we did the album launch in London, and in order for me to be able to just once, I won't do it all the time, but to experience presenting something to the audience, and know that they're going to get what I really wanted to give them. We partnered with this company from LA called Yonder, and they make these pouches that you slip your phone in, and then it closes, and it's like a tag that they can't open it, but you get to take, you have the phone on you, it's in your pocket for the whole performance, but you can't undo it, you can't get it out. So we did that, and we told everybody in advance with the tickets it's a phone-free event. One person was upset about that, which was a shame, but everybody else was like, okay, let's see how that goes. And it was so interesting because for me it meant a lot, because it's a little sacrifice. And to be honest, I think most artists do a lot of sacrificing anyway. I know I do, to make what I make. And I think it's okay for audiences to sacrifice something too. Tiny thing. And some people were a bit upset to let go of their phone, but they had it with them, so it was still in their possession. But at the end of the show, and a friend of mine interviewed some of the audience members to say, how did you feel? And they were like, at first 5 minutes they were like uncomfortable, bit anxious, not being able to get their phone out. But by the end, they were just kind of like realized, because the film, and when I perform the album live, it's the film as well, and the stories about this, and they came out, and most of the people said the same thing. It gave them a fresh perspective about their own use of the mobile phones. And a couple of people said to me since they didn't turn it back on until the next morning as well. So it was kind of nice. And for me as well, I mean, I've got problems with like sounds coming from different places. Like if I'm with two people, I can hold a conversation. Three more people, I can't. I just can't get it. So again, I think it's something to do with my autism, and so it was really nice to be performing the music in a space and have everyone there to listen to it instead of capture it with their phones or whatever, you know.
Right.
It was such a beautiful ritual. And I would recommend everybody try it, any other artist, and try it once, or even not even with, music, with anything, just when you're getting people together. When people come together, it's the most magical thing. And it's a shame when like some people feel interrupted or can't focus. So yeah, I felt bad at first, but I feel really good about it now. I felt making people do something, but yeah, it's really magical.
You're just a control freak. That's what it is.
It's true. I can't deny it.
So, I wanted to ask you, your autism, has that been like your biggest hurdle that you've had to get over in your life, or has there been anything else that may have been difficult for you?
I only found out last year about my autism. So this is, I've done 2 years of research about it, because I was waiting for 2 years before I knew that I'm autistic. So in terms of it being a challenge throughout my life, I'm only at the beginning of seeing, and I'm having to identify parts of my childhood, my 20s, my 30s, my teens, and sort of separate out bits that were to do with autism that wasn't diagnosed, you know, from other stuff that was just to do with me as an individual, right? Or my family, and so yeah, it's a lot to process. So but mostly it's just really helpful. I think we said before, when you know something about yourself that you didn't know, self-discovery it's empowering, you know. So that's not, I wouldn't call it you said like a hurdle to get over. I kind of see it like a gift, really. And the things that have been challenges because of being autistic, I now know about and can navigate. So I feel good with it, and it has changed some of the ways that I live my life. You know, I'm looking after myself a lot more since finding out that my brain works significantly differently to everybody. I grew up with many people telling me that I was difficult and all these sorts of things, which is one way of looking at it. I'm not difficult. I just have a particular way that I understand the world, and as do all autistic people. And I think that's the beauty of autism is it carries a message that ultimately we've all got to accept that however you do it isn't how the other guy does it, you know. And it doesn't, and there's no wrong or right. There's your way or there's my way. And if they clash, then we can stay out of each other's way. But mostly I think we can find something common, you know, a commonality between our different ways and learn. So yeah, it's not a hurdle. I want to say it's a superpower. People say that. It's also a condition. You know, it's also can be a disability, and sometimes very severe learning disabilities go with it. I'm lucky not to have that. But the conversation around neurodiversity and autism in particular, I think, is on its way to I think changing the way we are as humans in understanding and empathizing with each other. Yeah.
I'm just learning about it myself. I'm not very well schooled in it, but I was telling you before we started that my grandson is autistic, and the things that kid can do.
And 7 years old, right?
At 7 years old, the kid's making good money by making and selling these freshies, and yet he has a hard time learning in school.
Yeah.
But if he sets his mind to learning, you know, like he came over, he picked up my phone. He says, "Can I get on your phone, Papa?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And before I could even tell him the code to get in it, he'd already figured it out and opened up the phone.
Yeah.
I'm like, how in the world do you do that? And he says, "Oh, you know how to do this?" I said, "No, I don't know how to do that on the phone." He says, "Well, let me show you." And he starts going through. I can't even keep up with him because he goes so fast on this thing.
Yeah.
But sitting down and learning English and math and all this seems to be difficult. I don't know if he's just not interested at the moment or what. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that he has the advantage of knowing that he's autistic, because that sounds like me when I was a kid. I mean, I used to be able to write music in my head, like for like 4 to 6, even 12 different instruments just in my head. But then, and people would say, "Oh my God, it's amazing! It's so clever," and all that kind of stuff. But then, even to this day, if I sit down with anybody and try to work out money, balancing how much to spend this month and how much to save, and how that money means that numbers, I can't do it. I've never been able to do it. Can't do it. I failed maths even like at the basic level at school, and then was embarrassed to ever talk about it. So until very recently, I've kind of gone through life making a real mess of that side of things. And of course, you don't go around normally saying what you're not good at. You don't go around sort of So certainly not when you're an entertainer or a performer or an artist. You know, you don't stay and work by telling everybody what you're not good at. So, but now I don't mind now, because I sort of understand the lack of executive function is what it's called. And it's like, okay, it's not an excuse that I'm autistic, but it's a really strong reason why I can't do what everybody else I've ever met has been able to do. And I just thought, I'm stupid, you know, and I'm not stupid. I've got a difference. So it's that thing of like your nephew, right?
It's my grandson.
Your grandson, sorry. Your grandson has that ability to you know, command tech and have an amazing idea of how to make money and invest his energy in something which is, you know, it's growing already. And then what all the other kids perhaps in the classroom find very natural is a challenge for him. And I think that's the thing. And it's to go, well, let's embrace the fact that there's some amazing achievements, and let's be there for that person and not take advantage of them. And that's what I found a lot in some of the autistic groups that I've been in and conversations I've had, was that maybe not now, but certainly when I was younger, autistic people have been taken advantage of a lot of the time. And I think that's why it's also good to be able to call it out and say, I'm autistic. It's a good conversation that it's out there now.
What I'm proud about with my daughter is that she really doesn't treat him any different than she does her oldest son. She's aware of, you know, the little things that will set him off, or you know, but she's strict with him, you know, doesn't let him get away with anything. You're not going to use anything as an excuse with her. And I think it's important that you do try not, you treat them like everybody else. You try not to focus on that and make it I don't know, it's hard to explain. For me, my head thinks faster than my mouth does. I stuttered most of my life.
I'm like that too.
Yeah.
But I think it's that what you were saying about your daughter, I think that's the right way to do it. And then there'll be some things which she might want to do differently, but as well, because of his difference.
Yeah.
But to my mother didn't know I was autistic, obviously.
That was different.
But having said that, because of my differences, and I was quite a different kind of child, and my stimming and my physical kind of things that I would do, she absolutely stuck up for me, and also treated me just like there wasn't anything different about me at all. So in the same way that your daughter is doing for your grandson, it's the same thing, except that, you know, your daughter knows that her son is autistic. But I think, yeah, I get that just from my experience with my mother. It's almost like she did know, but she didn't want to admit it, which in those days is understandable, I think. And her mother also had a huge disability and was a little person. And so she didn't want to entertain the idea that there was anything wrong. So what's good now is that it's not classified as being anything wrong. It's just different.
You commentated on social media, I believe, during this album. Social media has kind of made it to where people just want to think about themselves. That in itself, where have we gone? I mean, we used to be able to kind of put our own needs to the side to help others, and it seems like people don't want to do that anymore. And that's where I think we're going wrong with things like social media.
I understand the observation that you've made. I think people do want to help others, but I think because of what we look at, and we look at a lot of advertising in social media anyway, we're confronted all the time with a strange phenomenon where altruism, generosity, looking out for other people, caring, charity, all these fine qualities of humanity are the most advertised qualities by companies in the world today. So we've lived now for, I think, a significant amount of time where it seems like the authenticity behind those things is harder to find than the kind of inauthentic versions. I name any corporate company that have got 1,000 adverts scheduled on Twitter this week. They'll all be about Mental Health Awareness Week. But next week it's a different week, and it's back to their brand and what you're going to buy from them. So, the problem with that is I think social media is not the place to solve the world.
Agreed. Well, let me
I think it's mobilizing movements to protest and galvanizing people to social changes. It can be good, but I think ultimately the dollar is powerful on those platforms, and if you've got the dollar, then it's going to work for you. But if you haven't, I think real embodied spaces, people around a campfire working stuff out, are much nicer than they would be on Twitter or Facebook.
Yeah, I guess I should.
It's not real, a lot of it. When you see people saying nasty things to each other, I always feel like if you could get a superhero who just comes along and gets two people on social media who are arguing and sort of zaps them into a situation where they're both sitting around a campfire, someone's got a guitar, and let's see how horrible they are to each other then. I don't think they will be that horrible. I don't think so. Especially if they've got no one else to help them. If everybody with all two people were the last two people on Earth, they'd be really nice to each other and really helpful. I think that's what I'm essentially an optimist. I write a lot about the horrors of the world, but I do believe that. I think it's the problem with social media is that it's hiding the truth that we're all much better and nicer to each other than it would have us believe.
I should probably rephrase that. The people that live on social media seem to be more about me, and not so much about, hey, let's think about our neighbor first. I don't think that social media really reflects true society, because when I go out to the store and I run into somebody I don't know, I can sit and have a conversation, and it doesn't matter what color skin they are, what religion they might be, or whatever the difference might be. We just find something in common and have a conversation. But you get on social media, it seems like it's all out war against each other, and that's sad.
Yeah. Well, when you're in real life, like you just said, and you're in a room in a shared space with another person, you don't need name tags, right? It's like you don't need categories.
Nope.
Nobody. But once you're not with somebody and there's a screen between you, then we want genres, categories, backgrounds, profiling. It was something because, when were they born, where do they come from, what religion, and it's just there's more labels on people than the dog tags. It's crazy.
We fought against that when we were kids. It was all about getting rid of labels. don't judge me by this or that or the other. And now it seems like everybody wants a label
Yeah.
if you pay attention to social media.
Well, if you pay attention to it, yeah. I mean, I come from a lot of what you would call label groups. You know, I come from an LGBT background. You know, I grew up with two mums. I'm mixed race. I'm autistic. I'm vegetarian. I'm in a lot of minorities, but most people just call me Tim. You know?
Right, right.
And unless I'm on social media, then people are kind of come to find you because of your labels. It's like sometimes that's a good thing, and I think some people need it. Some people are living in parts of the world where they can't get any recognition for their identity. And so I think that's really important that somebody can say, I want this label. But what you're talking about, where there's a lot of anger, you know,
Yeah.
people and lack of kindness to the others.
Drawing a line in the sand. That's
Oh,
what it seems to be when you're on social media, instead of why can't we just compromise, you know?
yeah, yeah,
I have no problems with anyone. It's when you tell me, well, you're either going to believe my side 100% or you're not worth a darn. Well, that's when I have a problem.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
We need the suit. We need this that superhero to come click their fingers and
I I totally agree.
get those two people sitting, you know, having a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or whatever it is, and work it out without the.
Yeah. To me, real life is not so much black and white. It's,
No,
I mean, how many parties have you gone to that people don't think the same politically or religiously, and nobody cared because you were just getting together to have fun?
yeah, I
Where
know.
social media is just this battleground, and I don't think that's real life.
No, it's not real life. Um, it's a, it's a representation.
Yeah.
You know, when you make theatre or music or film, it's a presentation.
Mhm.
It's social media is a representation. It's not that it's not really there. You know, it's like when like the president of the United States is meant to go somewhere and he doesn't go there. He sends his representative. It's not real. It's not really him.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's what social media is.
And you know,
Uh,
it's funny, I never wanted to get on social media. And the only reason I ever started was we were having a high school reunion, and I got an invitation from somebody in an email to join Facebook so we could all connect and we could all, plan out the high school reunion. And I never really got on there. And then when I started doing like the podcast, I kind of got a little more serious about it. And then I found myself every day making posts,
yes.
come listen to this, watch this video, blah, 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 blah. Honestly, the last 3 or 4 months, I've just kind of stepped away from it. It's like I've really not seen a difference in how many views I get or how many listens I get.
Yeah.
So I'll get on every once in a while, maybe to, I don't know,
It
to communicate with someone. But other than that,
yeah, I think it's kind of based on it's all based on numbers and stats and competition and I know I don't know. I never did sports at school. So I don't, the whole point scoring or numbers and all that. I have a few friends that help me with social media now because I I just literally go mad with it. It's
yeah,
really
I don't get
unhealthy
it.
for the way my brain works, and I can't do it. For obviously, when you're promoting something that you want people to share and listen to or watch or buy or whatever, I think you have to do that now. But yeah, personally, I don't have this is a conversation. You know, I can't really do conversation. oddly though, with the autistic community, they're the first people I can have a conversation. I feel I don't know why, because there's such a similarity. So I've started having some conversations on social media with other autistic people, and we seem to get each other in a way that I couldn't deal with before. So that's interesting. That's one good thing for me on social media.
Well, speaking of social media, what all platforms are you on?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm on, but my
Your
work,
your
my music and YouTube channel, Tim Arnold Music, Twitter, which is just my name, Tim Arnold. Facebook, I rejoined this year specifically to let people know about the new album that's about trying to get off Facebook.
How ironic, right?
Yeah, you got to get into the beast if you want to fight it. It's not fair, I don't want to fight it, but certainly, yeah, offer up a fresh and original perspective on it. But yeah, it's all Tim Arnold Music on all the platforms. So and Instagram as well. Yeah.
And what's your website?
The website I'll actually answer when people email me. I will actually answer on the website. It's timarnold.co.uk. Yeah.
Well, I'm actually going to share all those links in the description so people can find you easier.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Now you can purchase the album on your website. Is there anywhere else they can purchase it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're a streaming person, you can, like Spotify, you can get it on all those platforms apart from Apple, as we've discussed earlier. But if you want a record, then or a CD, then you can get it from my Bandcamp, which is also Tim Arnold Music. So the Bandcamp tends to be those that really want the physical item, which is what I like,
Yeah.
And this record was made for that as well, to be able to hold the work in the hand. But I'm not somebody that thinks there's one way. I think there's my way, there's your way, and everybody else's way.
Or get out the way.
Yeah, that way too.
Well, man, like I said, I will share those, and I want to purchase the album myself. But if I buy the album, you got to sign it for me.
Oh, absolutely, man. Yeah, I 100% be signing it. Yeah.
Well, man, this has been a great conversation, and any new projects come out, you got to let me know. I want you to come back on.
I'd love to, and it's really nice just connecting with you and hearing about your story as well and your family. And I just like you said, I struggled with Zoom when it began, but then I did my first Zoom gathering in 2021, I think, and I'm all good with it now. And this has been lovely. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit the subscribe button. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Till the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
Lost in an image, stop with the sound.